Today, in part 10 of this series, we'll work alongside Dave as he ticks the final jobs off the list to get the everyday bike ready for its first startup. Initially, we need to get the bike purged with oil so it's fully lubed and ready to go. Then we'll move on to deep cleaning and installing the carburettor. Thank you for watching. Let's get started.
Right, so now we can put primary chain case on. We're just going to clean up with a little bit of brake cleaner on the engine case and also the side cover. Now we need to well seal both sides. As before, don't put too much on, just spread it well. Okay, so we're going to do this now, get the gasket on, get the case back on, then we're going to leave it. We're going to let this well seal cure for 20 minutes before we put oil in the case. What we'll do, we'll crack on with filling up the gearbox and also getting some oil into the engine. We've got to make sure that we can purge the engine. We've got plenty of oil. We're going to put some in the crankcase as well, and we'll do the rocker feed line and give it every chance possible on the initial startup to have a good lubrication circulation. Okay, we've done this casing now. We'll leave that for a few seconds. We'll do this one with well seal, then we'll put the gasket on there. We won't put the gasket on for a moment because that will semi-go off. That will start to go tacky and hold the gasket in a few minutes. So I'll put it on now, it'll probably fall away. Right, we just go onto the dowel first, get it on there. Right, had to come off. Trying to put the gasket onto the case because it has the dowel on the front here. The hole for the dowel is not big enough. I haven't got a gasket punch the right size, so I'm just going to use my guide drift onto a piece of wood. If I keep that central, it might just cut there a little bit more. Give it a good blow. That's increased the size. So now that should go onto the dowel. Now what's often the case with gaskets, sometimes they don't line up. Now what we're going to do, because it should be the same both ways around, we'll take it back off. We have a slight problem here where the holes aren't lining up. So if we're careful, we'll just take that off and reverse it. You do find sometimes with aftermarket gaskets that they do vary sometimes in their quality. This is a bit of a job to tell because it looks the same both ways, but it's slightly different. It's not obvious which way around it goes. Okay, we're going to put the case back on now. We can just hold that down for a moment. Now just locate your dowel on the front. Keep your thumb on that end of the case and hold it up onto the gasket because there's only one dowel, so it could pivot and drop down. You've got to just sort your screws out, the long ones from the short ones. Now, if they look wrong, just rearrange them. You'll know because they're all going to stick out about the same. So we can just now nip these all up, just locate the gasket. Okay, we've got trouble with one screw. It's not going into the thread. Now, it could be the thread. I don't think it's damaged. It's probably got some muck in there, although we've blown everything out. So we'll take the screw back out because it had gone tight. We're just going to tap the thread down. The size of this is British Standard Fine, and that's 1/4 inch. So we'll put that in there. Wind it by finger, probably all you need to do, and it will pick up any muck in the thread. What I do is we'll just put some grips on. It just helps turn that round. That seems okay now. That's clean. Back it off. As you can see, it's fluted, and in the flutes there's a bit of muck. I'd run it through already once, and I've just done it a second time for you to see. But there's a bit of muck there in the thread. The thing about chasing a thread out, it will push it into the flute, and that's the best thing to do. And we'll just put an airline through that again, and then we can put a screw back in. If you were stuck, right, and you hadn't got one of these, okay, you hadn't got a tap the right size, get another screw and just either with a hacksaw cut a line. I'll let you have a close look, but just cut down one side, or get a small grinding disc and cut a line down there, because that'll work as a thread chaser. You better put that in and it'll do the same thing as this. It would chase round, and any debris, it will take it around spiral to where you got the groove, and the muck should go into the groove, and you should better clean that thread up. That's all we've done there. We just chase that through. We're just going to blow it out with an airline. And now she should just wind in cleanly. There was just a bit of debris in that thread. So if we had carried on, that's where you can damage your thread. Now we're just going to nip these screws up first. Then we go around and do them up the right tension. Now this washer, it's got a spline on it, and there's a cutaway on the footrest, and you can position your footrest to where you want it to line up, because the spline will hold it and the straight part of the washer will hold up against the footrest. We just need to check to make sure we got the footrest the same as the other one on the other side before we lock it all off. Well, now the case is on, got the footrest back on, we now need to bring up the adjustment on the back brake and also adjust the back brake switch. So we just wind this up. Probably what I'll do is we'll put a piece of wood underneath the main stand because the back wheel's still rubbing on the bench, because we just want to make sure that the linings aren't picking up on the brake drum. But for now, I think that'd be about right. We'll turn the ignition on, and now we've got the back light coming on. Just need to make sure that this is set properly. We just lock this screw up. Yeah, because what it's doing is when the brake goes on, it's allowing this to come forward and activate the switch, the back light's on. When it goes back, the lever is taking this back. So we just make sure that screw's tight and doesn't come loose. And I think that's about right, but we will just check to make sure the back wheel's spinning without any drag on the brake shoes in a moment. It's good, done. In doing this adjustment for the back brake, to make sure that we're not binding our back brake, I've noticed that the chain is catching on the guard. Now, if I put my hand on here, it stops. So I need to tweak this. We might have to just take the guard off a little bit and just open it up, make sure we've got a bit more clearance. It could be where the chain link's coming around, if it's just catching it. But getting back to the brake, you can just hear the linings just touching. Now, we'll just back that off a little bit. But this is a little bit of an issue we got with this guard. We have to just sort this out. Okay, we discovered what the problem was. We did have the chain touching the chain guard, and it did sound like it was further up on the guard, but actually it was at the back here. So we've just been able to just tweak this out by hand, and now we're okay. The wheel spindle, I've actually left the spindle slightly loose because the chain tension, I've got it to where roughly it'll be. I mean, there's a bit of slack there, but as we all know, when that's off the main stand and it's sitting on both wheels, me on the seat, the swing arm would come up and it would take up that chain a little bit. So I'll then adjust the chain properly and do up the wheel spindle. So at the moment it's semi-loose. That's one thing we need to do at the end. We're now ready to put oil in the gearbox. So we've got the filler screw first to take out, and underneath we've got a level screw. So this is what's in the bottom of the engine. We have this bigger hexagon that you saw just now, which has a tube running in the center. There's a hole at the top. This is our level plug that we've taken out. We just put this back in. Now when we fill the engine from above, the oil will fill up in this part of the gearbox, and when the oil level gets up to where the tube is, it enters the tube and drips down, and that's when we know we've got our correct level. So all that's doing is really giving you a height inside the gearbox to where the oil level should be. So we're using a 90 grade oil. Okay, so I filled this up, got to the level. Now we know we're at the level because it's just dripping out now underneath. I've put a bit of rag underneath there. So we can now put in the level screw underneath, stop that dripping out. I've just put in the filler screw because we've got a big slot in these screws, and this goes for a lot of bikes with inspection cover screws and level screws. It's a wide slot, and if you take a screwdriver blade, it's very narrow. And if you put that in there, it's got so much movement, and that's where you tear the sides out. So that's why it always pays to have something that is the same thickness as that slot. Now that goes in there a treat. You don't need to put too much pressure on it. Like I say, don't overdo things. It has a fibre washer underneath. Just get it in there and just give it a nip. Just nip it up. It won't come loose. Primary chain case oil. We use a fairly light oil in here. It doesn't need to be heavy oil because we don't want it making that clutch plate stick. So I tend to use something like 1040, more modern oil. I use the Castrol one. Okay, I've used this before. So we measured out 1/4 pint, because on this earlier engine, this is 67, there isn't a screw that comes out and gives you correct level. So it's easier just to put in the correct amount. So I put this in with a funnel. On this bike, someone had fitted an external oil filter. I've taken it off. I've got one on the Commando, but this had been fitted and it was on one of the engine plates. It was at the back of the swing arm. It would have a cartridge on here, and all it would have is an oil feed that would go in through one side of the filter and out the other side of the filter. Now I've put it back to standard because, like the Gold Star and the Rocket Goldie, they're just on an oil system where, like this, you have a tank. In here you've got a filter. This is a strainer filter that's in here. Oil's got to pass through here to go to feed the engine down below. So it is filtered, you know, that is a good filter. So oil is filtered through there. It's got to go through that mesh. And also, when it's picked up in the bottom and returned back to tank, there's a mesh in the bottom. So, you know, I've not taken anything off this that's going to cause any wear because it's not filtered. It is still filtered standard. This is a standard setup. Now, I'd rather fill that with oil and have a simple system where it's gravity feed, goes straight through that gauze filter, picked up on the mesh underneath on the scavenger, comes back to tank, and just do my oil changes regularly. It just makes it nice and simple. We're now ready to put oil in the engine. So what we need to do, we need to take the little tiny cover off the front of the engine, which was the cover we took off to do the lock up on the crank if you locked it up to get the degrees before TDC. Now that gives you access to the crankcase. So we put some oil in there. The oil will go down into the scavenger valve in the bottom. It'll pick up on that mesh. So we're going to put about 1/4 pint in there. When we turn the engine over, it will give that pump something to draw on, and it will draw the oil up. Obviously return it back to tank, but also take it to the rocker feed. So we've got oil straight away being taken back up there. That's the first thing we need to do. And then we'll put that cover back in obviously first, and then we'll fill up the oil tank. We've got the plugs out and we're going to kick it over quite a few times to get some oil circulation. The more we can get oil around the system now, the better when we start the engine, because there will be that little bit of time when there's not a constant flow. It's a flow we need, not pressure. So once we've got circulation of oil, that's when we know you're okay. It's always that initial bit when you start an engine up that you've got to feed and you've got to return. That's why we always take the cap off the oil tank and have a look in there to make sure we got oil coming back. That's the first thing we always check. So we put a little bit of oil in here. We put about 1/4 pint. The oil's quite thick at the moment because it's cold in the workshop here. So this enables us to squeeze this, and we got the flexi under on here. We can get it straight into the crankcase. So I'm just going to squeeze this in, put a bit of oil in the bottom. Because the oil was quite cold, the squeezy bottle didn't really work. With squeezing, wasn't getting very much in. So I've just literally emptied out this oil can and put the engine oil in here, and I can squirt it straight in. Just say, everyone knows this, when you built an engine, it's that initial startup. We all worry about it. You worry that you're not going to get any oil circulation early enough and things are going to go tight. So we try and purge the engine as much as possible. Because I've got 50 oil, it is a little bit thick this time of year. It is heavier oil because it's cold in this workshop. So I'll be really careful that I've got oil in the pump and it's actually doing what it should do. It's actually got a bit of return, so we've got some lubrication there. When we built the engine up, everything was well lubed up, but we're just going to charge up the rocker feed now with oil can. Then we'll just put the line back on, then we can fill up the oil tank and we can turn it over with the plugs out, kick it over for as long as we like really, just to get some circulation. Quantity, well, you just get it so you've got a bit of pressure so it's actually going through where it should do. But you won't overhaul this, it will end up going back down the bottom of the engine anyway, be picked up. What we'll do, we'll just snip it up a little bit because we're going to kick this engine over. We haven't got the carburettor ready yet for installation, so we're just going to finger tight this. So we've now filled up the oil tank, 5 pints of oil. But we won't put in 5 pints to start with. We'll fill it so it's halfway between the high mark and the lower mark, or thereabouts. And we can start it up and see our oil circulation, and then we'll top it up to there really. I just want to make sure I can see the oil coming back properly. Don't want to put too much in to start with, because once it turns over and it circulates the oil, we get a proper level then. Just making sure we got a good return feed on the oil back to the oil tank. That looks okay. If you want to have a look in there with the camera, you can see there's a tube coming back into the tank. Classic 50. I use Classic 50 because it's the correct oil to use this type of engine. You want a slightly thicker oil really. They are better on it. I mean, some people put multi-grades in, which is fine, but you don't want a thin oil. 2050 is good, but straight 50 or straight 40, which should be now used in the winter. But I'm sure time we got this oil in, we got it circulated. If you use heavy oil in the winter, it is a bit of a job to turn the engines over sometimes. You'll find it's quite a thick oil, and it will be quite hard to kick it over. But that will be okay. But if I was using the bike every day now, I would change to a 40 oil. I'd change to a lighter grade. But yeah, it's just fine for now. Now we're ready to try and get some oil circulation now. So we're going to kick it over. We've got the plugs out. We're trying to get as much oil going through the pump, circulating, going through the crank, going up to the rocker feed, lubricating all the parts that are required before we do the initial start. If we was just to put fuel in it with obviously the carb back on and fire it straight away, there's that little bit of time when there's no lubrication, and you worry that you're going to have a time where there's no oil circulation. It could nip up, so it's running dry. So as much as we can do now before we fire it up properly, it's better for the engine. What I was trying to see if I had any return, but it's too dark and I don't think we got enough rotation speed. I think that would do. Right, to give you a bit of breakdown on the carburettor, what we've done, we put it into the kerosene wash first to get all the main crud off the carb. Then we stripped it down. We blew it off an airline first, so it was dry-ish. Then we stripped it right out. Now, it's not until you take everything apart, you're going to find how bad it is inside. Inside the float chamber, it was really quite cruddy. So we've put it back in the kerosene wash. Then we've put all the components in the sonic cleaner. We put that in there for about 5 minutes, and then we took everything out, laid it on the bench. Some bits we put into brake cleaner, little tiny components that we could lose in the bottom of the sonic cleaner. It's important to blow all your jets out. Make sure they're really clean, your pilot, your main jet. Make sure that your needle valve is okay, the tip's good that goes up in the seat. You're just checking everything, your gaskets are fine, but you just want to be really, really sure that your assembly is correct when you start to put it back together. Just make sure your bench area is nice and clean. There's not many things to worry about those carbs, they're quite robust, but make sure everything's clean. Don't over tighten the screws back on the float chamber either. And also, if you have a problem with the main jet holder and it leaks, what I've done there, you'll see in the speeded up video, we put another Doughty washer on there because the base of the carburettor is a little bit worn away. The fibre washer might have been all right, but just to save taking it apart again, we've put a Doughty washer on there, and that's it. And we've put the air cleaner on, but we might have to take that off because I'm putting it back on. As I keep saying, I didn't take it apart, so it's knowing how we can get that back in place. But the carb's done, ready to go on, then we can fire the engine up. Okay, so we're now ready to install the carburettor. I've screwed on the pancake filter because if you try and do this afterwards, when the carb's back on, you can't really get to the back and screw it on the fine thread very easily. New throttle slide. We're putting the needle back in, that's in the centered position. We can make our mind up whether it's running weak or rich, we can richen it or weaken it on that slide by taking that needle out. So we're just going to install this now, and then we can put that on the studs on the manifold. Just put a little bit of lube on the slide. This is just a bit of duck oil, so it slides down into the carb body easily. Now just trying to do this so you can see what I'm up to. It's important to get your needle in. So we look up inside and make sure it's going down in the venturi. That goes down, locates on a peg at the back. Just be careful with the collar screw at the top, that you start it off and you don't get it cross-threaded. So that's locked up tight. So we're going to tighten the carburettor up now on the manifold. Just show what we got here. We've got a gasket, insulator block, and another gasket. And we pulled up a little bit on the other side on the nut itself, on the stud. Just do this side, then go back to the other side and do the final pull down. Right, so carb's on the manifold now. What we've had to do is back off the pancake filter, because now we need to put the banjo, which has got a double feed, both fuel lines, from the main tap to the reserve tap. So we put that on there. There's not a lot of room, so we need to just get in there. Okay, the banjo's on. We need now to connect up the rocker feed union, the rocker box, and then we can fire the engine up.